I remember in my 5th year, I messaged my dad and I said, if I don't cross over from the red to the green in this year, I'm going to shut the brand down.
So I do feel that a lot of women, especially in India, when I've spoken to them, it's a little bit harder for them than it is for men.
At the beginning, when they would come to me, I'd be like, men are going to be like this. You just really need to know how to get your work done. Don't be so aggressive. Don't be so assertive. That was such wrong advice. They were 100% right. My team inspires me. And the fact that I can actually work with so many girls, tell them that you can ask for a raise without them getting emotional, without their voices like shaking. And the only thing that I tell them is that you have a right to ask, I have a right to say no. They're still like, I'm his daughter, I'm her sister, I'm his girlfriend, I'm his wife. It's still all of that. We're actually fooling ourselves. Now when I look at myself, I'm nobody's anything.
Shubhika.
Yes, Shivani.
Welcome to Millennial Mind.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I can't believe the dates aligned.
Yeah.
And you're in London for like 5 days and you said yes to me. I'm very, very grateful.
I was really excited to actually talk about it because there's so many people who reach out to me and they're like, we want to know your story and etc. etc. So I've never really done it this way before.
Really?
Yeah, so it'll be my first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for choosing me. So I want to start with your journey. So I'm sure everybody who's watching this knows that you are the founder of Papa Don't Preach, one of the most amazing brands ever, which is why I'm wearing this crazy pink outfit. Everyone who watches my podcast will be like, you never wear that. That's so on you. But I had to for you today.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I spotted you from a mile away.
So tell me, why did you start Papa Don't Preach? And tell me about the name. Is it really like Papa Don't Preach to me?
I think it always is an extension of you whenever it is that you're starting a brand, you're starting a label, you're starting any project. There will always be a very personal reason attached to it. At least back when we started, when millennials started doing it, I think Gen Zs are a lot more analytical that way.
Yeah.
But when we did it, it was just very instinctive. So yeah, there was a lot of Papa Don't Preach in it. Because I'm also Punjabi and Papa is like a central, figure.
Yeah.
You kind of run away from it and you run towards it. So there was a lot of that. He's very instrumental in shaping who I am, who my sisters are, how we operate in this world, especially like in our work. So yeah, there was a bit of that. But mostly I knew that it had to come from music because I think that is common for most creative people. That you often find what's going on inside of you, like you find a language in the music you're listening to and it kind of like shapes and molds and like gives it color and structure. So I knew it had to come from song. So I just sat with my playlist and I was going through it and this just popped right at me and I was like, oh my God, that is me. And then I called up my friend and I told her, what do you think of this? And she said, oh my God, it is so you. But please check with Papa if he's going to be okay with it. And luckily, Papa was at home that day. So I went to Papa and I said, Papa, what if I call it Papa Don't Preach? And he said, it'll be amazing. It'll be so good. So yeah, that's how Papa Don't Preach happened. And I think it's such a lovely name that it's an icebreaker. It's an instant icebreaker. Nobody like really knows what to say to me when they see me, but they just go like, okay, why the name? Like, why Papa Don't Preach? And it always starts such like exciting conversations because they have so much history with Madonna and some of them don't, like a lot of people don't even know it's a Madonna song or who Madonna is.
I didn't know. So the other day I said to my mom, guess who I'm interviewing on Friday? And I said, do you know Papa Don't Preach? And she started singing this song. And I said, what?
You not know?
She goes, what? I was like, what are you singing? She was like, that's a song by Madonna. And I was like, no, not the Madonna song, the brand.
I'm really surprised. Yeah, but yeah, that's where it came from. Say hi to mom from my side and thank you for that education.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it was.
Wow. And so have you always been into fashion? Have you always been a designer?
I feel really fortunate. I tell people that my parents kind of gifted me the gift of boredom, which is that when I would come back from school, they would just let me be. There was no rushing me to like class A to class B to like this class and sports and then they would just let me be. And I think when you're getting really bored, the things that you instinctively attracted to or drawn towards are the things that you're actually like aligned to do. So yeah, in those moments, I would be cutting up like my brand new cargo pants. I really didn't care about my pants, but I wanted to cut out the pockets because they were like a bag size, and I would attach a string and I would make bags out of it and try to sell it to my friends. Some of them really tried to even buy it. So it was very natural to me, and I see that in my sisters as well.
Right.
So I think that parents play such an important role in shaping whether or not you will align to your purpose or align to what you're naturally gifted to do. So I got lucky like that. But, having said that, I'm not really obsessed with fashion per se. I haven't really watched Sex and the City. I don't really obsess over. I don't really know what's trending or what brand showcase what or what designer showcase what at what fashion week. For me, fashion is just a canvas which I use to kind of express my creativity. Even when I finished my studies, I finished my 10th and my 12th and my junior college. I don't know what you call it here. But I didn't really go into fashion. I haven't really studied fashion.
Right.
Because I was like, I want to do 100 million things at that time because, I used to read so much. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to do international relations. I wanted to learn horse riding. There was just so much I wanted to do. So I ended up doing mass media and specializing in journalism. Then I made a business acquisition, as I like to call it, at 19.
Wow.
Thanks to my dad again. Thanks to my papa. So when I was studying journalism, I really wanted to do like evening classes or a summer course or something in fashion because I was drawn towards it.
Right.
And then this local boutique auntie came to me and she said, because I used to visit her often and obviously she must have seen I have a keen interest in like aise banana hai and you do it like this. So she said, I need to sell my business because I need the money. So let me know if you're interested. And I went to my dad and he said, luckily he's Punjabi. So,
right.
I mean, he gets really excited by like business.
Okay.
And he said, Joe, okay, give me a business plan and let's figure out how you'll do it. But your study shouldn't suffer because I was still in college. So that's how it happened. And he helped me make my first business acquisition. And it was for 60,000 rupees. At that time, it was a big deal for me.
Okay.
I don't know what the conversion would be.
60,000 is probably, is it by 100? So 6,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a huge deal for me. And I got one Master G, 2 tailors, and it was a 200 square feet tailoring shop, literally. So I would go to college in the morning and I would come back in the afternoon and sit at the tailoring shop. And I thought I'd learn on the job and I'd suddenly start making these beautiful clothes. But the reality was that I needed to pay rent and I needed to pay salaries. And I think at 19, you're just so naive about all of that. And like in your school and even in uni, you don't really prep for what it really takes to run a business if you ever want to. So what I ended up doing majority of the time was just stitching petticoats and like sari blouses for like 100 rupees, 120 rupees. And then aunties coming in and like haggling and saying, she makes it in 100. Why are you charging me 120? And I'm like, but I put this lace on it. I made it in satin, auntie, that is not cotton.
I made it with love.
And so I decided that I'm not going to interact with clients because that was really overwhelming for me, which was also a reason why I called it Papa Don't Preach. And I launched Papa Don't Preach as one of the first independent labels to start an e-commerce website in India where it was like made to measure and stuff like that. But this happened when I put a pause on my tailoring shop, finished my graduation, handed over my tailoring shop to a friend. I said, take care of it for 7 months. I came to London and did a really short course, which you can't really call a fashion course because you actually need 6 years to be able to be technically sound at fashion.
Wow.
So yeah, I did that, came back and I took back my tailoring shop and I expanded it and I decided that India needed me because at that time, high street wear didn't really exist. In India, there was no Zara, there was no nothing.
Right.
And I came back and I told my dad, listen, like I went to London and there's just all these high streetwear brands and River Island was my absolute favorite.
Okay.
And he said, but why do you think other Indian designers haven't done it? And I was like, they've just not thought of it. And he was like, that's not possible. And I was like, no, they've just not thought of it. Like I have this brilliant idea. So again, that's really naive, So I launched it with like these flash mobs that we did, again, one of the first in India to do that in like all these nightclubs inspired by Gossip Girl. And for 2 years, I tried to run it as a high streetwear label.
Okay.
But I kind of realized that when you live in India, you have to respect the fact that you are living in a culture that needs you to, if you want to succeed and if you want to like make money out of your business, you need to make Indian wear. So that's why I kind of switched. I still do Western, which is what I'm wearing, but 90% of it is the revenue generating part of it is the Indian wear. I don't know what your question was. I lost track.
It's perfect. So one of the things I've heard you speak about in other interviews, and you say some people switch off at this point, right, is when you say you were raised with privilege.
Yeah.
Now, I think I have a different perspective on this. You can never win with people because if you're raised with privilege, which we all are, by the way, to some extent, everyone has some level of privilege. Someone will criticize you and say, oh, well, you know, only because your family provided you with support that you were able to do that, right? And some people will say, you know, it's not really them, it's their family investing money, whatever. But if you did nothing, people would call you lazy. They will call you entitled. So when people are born into privileged families, which we all hope our children are born into, we all work hard. So our children, our future families, we give them the best of everything. So at what point what are people expecting, right? And you talk about this a lot.
So I think my point was that people, especially on social media, they want to know the founder's story,
right,
as one that was really inspiring in a way that they were completely broke and they came up from nothing and then they built this and, you know, then it makes sense. Then it's something that you can, you know, pat on their back and say like, you did good and look at you. I think where this switch off is where you acknowledge the fact that, yes, I was privileged and I am privileged. I was thrilled that I was supported both financially, emotionally, in excitement and in enthusiasm by my family to do this. I think it's absolutely impossible to be able to do it without that. Having acknowledged that, a lot of people are privileged, as you correctly said.
Yeah.
The real question and the actual juice of the story really lies in what did you do with that privilege?
Exactly.
Did you build a business that now can support so many more and so many more families? We have 300 plus karigars and the extended families that now rely on the kind of business that I've built with the help of that privilege. Are you able to create the work culture that people are excited to come to work and say, you know, look, I work here? Are you able to have an impact in the world, even if it's in the fashion world, the creative world, by creating products that are created intentionally, ethically, beautifully, thoughtfully?
Yes.
So I think that that's the real question that people run away from asking because they need it in like a really short, hot bullet that, you know, I went from this to this.
Exactly.
And if you listen to me, you're going to go from this to this. And like, that's what I want to know. I don't want to know the in-between because I know that's the truth, that it's going to take a lot of work for me to go from point A to point B, but I don't want to hear about it because, oh my God, then I'll have to do something about it. You know, having said that, yes, the fact that I was supported at the beginning, and a lot of us are supported in the beginning, at least in India, we're very sheltered and we're very lucky that way. It's not the same here. I know a lot of girls here that I've been meeting on my trips to both New York, LA, and here, that a lot of the girls are self-made 100% because they don't have the kind of support we have in India. So I did get the start fund. You get that at the beginning. But if you are somebody who is very self-aware and a very responsible person, you will not be able to continue taking the money if your business is not working out. So I remember in my 5th year, I messaged my dad and I said, you know, if I don't cross over from the red to the green in this year, I'm going to shut the brand down. And he tried to message me saying, no, you know, I'm there and don't. And I was like, no, like, this is it. If it doesn't, then I'm not going to pretend that I can just continue doing this. So the first 5 years are so hard. And I wish I could have these conversations with the people who helped me reach here and get here, my friends who've been witness to me. And, you know, I used to call up my best friend and I'd be like, you know, Nisha, I have only 200 in my account and I have to pay kharchi. Kharchi is like you have to pay every weekly to your karigars.
Oh.
And we both would really laugh about it because it was just so funny that, people think we're running like these fancy businesses and this is the reality of it. And I just have so much faith in the universe that I'm going to get an order and I'll be able to pay off the kharchi, and it would happen. I would just get one client and I'd get that like 20,000 order and I'd pay off my kharchi. So I was literally going from like week to week to week to week and rent to rent to rent to rent. And yeah, I remember doing this exhibition and I had to pay rent that month, and I got, somebody paid me cash. And I quickly gave it to Lily, who was with me. So she joined me as housekeeping staff, but now she's my manager.
Okay.
Manager in terms of like my stock manager and things like
Yes.
that. I remember collecting it and giving it to her, and I said, "Bhag ke ja." And landlord
Which means run.
Yeah, run. The landlord is gonna come and just give it to him. And so she ran, she put it in a purse and she's going and she's paying it. So that is the truth of it. And
That's
I think
crazy.
but that is the reality, and that is what makes it so exciting that today I can talk about that and feel so privileged by that as well. But it
But
was
how were
hard.
you not scared?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's not that I wasn't scared. And I think it takes a lot of people supporting you and kind of building you up at every point and saying, it'll be fine. But there's a lot of resilience that you have to have when you set out to start a business, and a lot of faith. I just had a lot of faith that money will come and I will be able to make my payment. And it has happened. And I am like that till date,
I'm getting teary. I just feel like that's such a crazy story, how you just didn't have the money to pay for your rent.
Yeah.
And people look at you now. And you said, and look, what's so fascinating me is you said for 5 years you didn't make money.
Yeah, no, not at all.
For 5 years.
No, even now, there are months where our expenses are way higher than what we're getting, right? Because it's more seasonal if you look at bridal or Indian wear. So there are months, there are like 6 months at a stretch when we're not. But then there are 6 months when you do in season time. So that is any business. And that's what I say, that if you're aware at every point and if you're engaging in your business at every single point, there is no moment in time where you will sit back and say, look, I've arrived and I've done it. Because every day is a challenge. And that is the nature of business.
Yes.
At whatever level.
There's just no such thing as an overnight success. It doesn't happen like that for anyone.
Impossible, yeah.
And everybody probably looks at you now and thinks, oh my God. When I've told some people I'm interviewing, they're like, no way. Like, no way. And even me, I was like, she said yes? What? Oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Because people look at you now and they see your brand as like what you are now. And they assume you've done that in like 2 years, 3 years. Nobody knows the long story. But one of the things I want to touch on is, you're very vulnerable and very open for telling me just now there are months where your expenses are higher than your cost. A lot of people wouldn't do that. And one of the things that I think we connected on initially was when you were talking about how people complain that your outfits are too expensive.
Yeah.
And this is a common theme that's happening amongst a lot of businesses. And I've heard a lot of memes and I've seen a lot of reels where people say, don't ask me for a discount. Don't ask me for the best price. The price is the price. If you don't like it, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
So I think that it's brilliant to be able to say it like that. But again, it is the same problem, which is that you're giving it to people in a bullet form, right? The truth is that would I today be able to afford Papa Don't Preach? Just, I like an outfit and I want to buy it. Personally, would Shubhika be able to buy it? No. I would have to probably save up for it. I would have to plan for it. So the truth is that it is expensive.
Yeah.
But it is luxury. Yeah. And why it is luxury is because it takes around 20 karigars so many days over a week to finish one lehenga. And then that is just the embroidery part of it. And then it goes for stitching, and then it has so many processes. So something that is actually, if you go back to how when fabric is produced and dyed and shipped and packaged and then embroidered and then washed and then cleansed and if you go through all the processes, the product in itself is expensive.
Right.
Secondly, if you are paying more than fair wages, that is the added expense. Having said that, the product still probably is just 40-50% of the entire cost.
Wow.
It is the luxury, it is the brand that attaches the additional cost. And why that happens is because So if today somebody wants to come and shop a Papa Don't Preach, and if I don't give them a store, if I don't give them an experience when they walk in, if I don't give it to them in the right packaging, if I don't put it on models, if I don't have it on Alia Bhatt, if I don't have it, the aspiration wouldn't be created. You wouldn't really want to own it. You wouldn't actually want to like walk into the store, sit and say, listen, I wore a Papa Don't Preach. So you want the luxury experience. You want people to say that, look, I'm wearing a lehenga that Alia Bhatt probably wore, but you don't want to pay for that. You just want to pay for the product. And you want to pay for the product at actual product cost, which is just the product, not about not for the people who are making it, not for the people who are designing it. Designing a lehenga takes, I think, close to a month, which is IP, right? How long and how many people and how many designing hours, and then to actually be able to execute it, and how many masters and how many pattern cutters and how many people are involved and how many steps are involved in making that product, versus going to a boutique where you're saying, you know, there to you get copies in like half the price. But that's because they didn't have to invest in a team that thought of the design, that came up with the design, that made multiple corrections and changes. So of course you're going to pay half for it because they really did nothing. They just really lifted it off the internet and made a copy, you know.
And your 4K camera, as you said.
Yeah.
So like you come into my shop with your 3 cameras on your iPhone, you take my photo, you leave, and then you claim it's a Papa Don't Preach outfit too.
Yeah. And okay, I mean, if you want to do that, you do that. I'm not no one to judge you. But then you want to tag me.
Yes.
And then you want to say, look, I'm wearing a Papa Don't Preach when you're wearing a copy. And that's so unfair that you don't want to shop from me. You want to say it's so expensive. It's overpriced. Not just that it's expensive. I understand it's expensive. I understand that myself, because if I would have to buy it on my own, I would also find it expensive, because luxury is expensive, because it's an entire experience. It's an entire brand and like an ecosystem attached to just more than just the product. But you say all that and then you tag us to let the world know that you've spent 3 lakh versus the 50,000 that you've actually paid. That's really unfair.
And now you want to be associated with my brand?
Yeah.
I found that so powerful.
Yeah. And then they actually respond by saying, oh, but you know, I'll send you a receipt. I've actually shopped from you. And then, you know, or they'll say things like, oh, I hadn't even heard of your brand. I just bought it from a boutique. So how did you tag me? So these it's so frustrating at every level, that at least have the courtesy to say, you know, and there are so many brides who do copy us. We don't really go out saying anything to them. I'm saying don't tag us.
Yeah.
You know, don't try to, I mean, that's the least that you can do.
That's so powerful. I remember seeing your stories on that and I just thought, wow, I can't believe people are doing that.
Yeah.
Like you're copying the design, you have the audacity to tag the designer, and then when you've asked them to take it down, they say no. You
know, and it's so funny because some wedding blogs actually like take those pictures, because the brides send them those pictures, right? And then we start getting orders because of the copies. And
good.
What do you do? Like, what do you do in this whole thing? And then I told my girls, okay, share it. I mean, if we're getting orders, share the pictures. I mean, why not?
Oh my God, so then you're sharing it?
Yeah, that just happened once. But I'm saying that's so funny because you don't know whether to laugh or cry in these situations. So you just... And people say, oh, imitation is the best form of flattery. Okay, it is. It is.
But it's such an insult.
But also no. Because now what's happening because of social media is if I don't post it immediately, I'm going to lose followers and lose interest. So I need to post it immediately, even before we are ready with the production to back it up, right? As soon as I've released the picture, people have already started copying it and it comes out in the market. By the time we're out with the collection and the production, people are like, oh, I've already seen it in like here or there. And so that actually hits the business, and that's really upsetting. It's no longer about flattery or not, because the world has changed, the speed has changed. It would have been flattering if it came out like 6 months after I've released my collection. Now it comes out even before I've released it, just because of the BTS or like a snippet that we've shared.
Wow.
Yeah. So it directly impacts businesses.
And that's what people say about fast fashion, right?
Yeah.
Designers spend so long trying to curate the perfect pieces. People come in, swoop their idea, and it's already out in the market.
Yeah.
And everyone's already over it, or everyone already has it.
Yeah. And then people are like, oh, but it's not your IP because you've not trademarked it. But I'm like, have you ever tried to understand what the process of trademarking is or patenting is? I would have to spend years trying to patent one lehenga. And by the time I've done that, I'm already sick of the design. So there is like no winning here.
Sorry, people want you to patent every lehenga you put out.
I mean, that's when you can claim it to be your IP.
Oh
right?
my God. But
Yeah.
for every single, it's so expensive. It would be like
It's expensive. I mean,
crazy,
it's,
time consuming.
And also there are so many loopholes, right? Like if in your entire lehenga, the person has changed a little bit of the flower, it's no longer a copy. So
what's the point?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I want to talk about your experience as owning a business as a woman, because I do feel that a lot of women, especially in India, when I've spoken to them, it's a little bit harder for them than it is for men. Did you have that experience?
So personally, because I've never really worked anywhere but in my own label and I've always been in a position of power, it hasn't actually been challenging for me. But I do know the girls who worked with me have found it challenging because all the karigars that we have are 99.9% men. So the girls who would have to come in and like deal with them, they've found a lot of like, how can you be my manager and how can you,
Wow.
So that is like, even my shoe designer, my Tanu, she struggled a lot because she had to deal with the shoe industry, which was just only men, and she had to deal with vendors who were just extremely sensitive to taking directions from women.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've seen girls struggle. I haven't personally, maybe I haven't really thought about it as deeply as I should have, because I know that it is harder for women. And I don't think that that is just to do with us being in India.
No, it's not.
It is hard, yes, in general. But personally, I cannot really narrate any experiences.
And how do you guide your team through that? So your shoe designer, you mentioned somebody else, when they're experiencing that.
Yeah, so I think there I could have been better, because at the beginning when they would come to me and I'd be like, men are going to be like this. You just really need to know how to get your work done. Don't fight back, but just like figure out a softer way to just get your work done, because you just have to get your work done, right? Like say this or say that or do this. So just like, don't be so aggressive. Don't be so assertive. Don't be da. But now I feel like that was such wrong advice, because they were 100% right in wanting to do it the way, because there's absolutely nothing wrong in them asking why my order is not on time, or when will I get it, or can you give me an update, and these men would get really upset by that, like, well, how can she ask me? How they would message me, why is she, I don't want to talk to her, you talk to me directly, like, why is she going on asking me why and I was like, she's doing a job, but I should have kind of empowered her to say, fight back.
As women, I feel we're very much told not to be assertive.
Yeah.
And when we are assertive, when we are strong, when we are firm, people look at us as difficult.
100%.
I felt that my whole life.
100%.
And when I stand my ground on something, as much as I stand my ground, inside I feel guilty.
Yeah.
Because I think, what are they thinking of me?
I agree.
If my mum asks me for something and I say no, and I set a boundary, I still feel guilty.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's just ingrained, right? Being a good girl is ingrained.
It is.
It is. And it's so hard to understand that there is just not a good girl and a bad girl. There is an in-between. And the in-between has never really been defined.
Yes.
By anyone, especially not in our role models, like our mums or anybody older than us, at least from that generation, because they just had it so much harder.
So much.
And because words and like these quotes and like all these things that we see on Instagram are okay, but the only way to actually learn this is by watching somebody. And I think the role models were missing. So we didn't know what an in-between girl looked like, and like, what is her objective? Like, how do you define her? And what does she look like? What does she say? And it was so scary to become that person who suddenly wouldn't have that identity. And like, who am I right now? It's so important for us to be able to identify at every point that, oh, I'm being like her, I'm being like this one, so I'm okay, I'm being like her, so I'm bad, I'm being like this or that. So it's the in-between that I think is our responsibility to now be able to define and be role models for the next generation. And I feel really fortunate. Somebody asked me on the panel the day before, what inspires you? And I said, my team inspires me. And the fact that I can actually work with so many girls and sit with them and tell them that you can ask for a raise without them getting emotional, without their voices like shaking, like, I don't know how much I want, and
Yes.
they're so scared. And I can picture myself in their shoes. And the only thing that I tell them is that you have a right to ask, I have a right to say no. Both parties are equally empowered here. So don't be afraid, because like if you ask for something really crazy, I will be able to say, listen, I won't be able to do that, and vice versa. So there is a power imbalance in girls. They need to be built up. Like, we have to be built up. Now I'm 35 now in 2 days.
Wow, happy birthday.
Thank you. So, and I think what happened to me when I turned 30 was this kind of a realization that, oh shit, I don't know my identity in a very real sense of like, am I a good girl or am I a bad girl? Because there were certain decisions I was taking in my personal life that was just making me question that all the time. And this cannot be learned unless you are put in a position or a life situation or an experience where you're absolutely identityless, and the only person you can identify with is yourself. And then you're forced to look at like, who am I now? So I think that in your 20s, and that's most of the girls that I work with, luckily they haven't had life experiences that have put them in a position where they just only need to identify with themselves. Wow. They're still like, I'm his daughter, I'm her sister, I'm his girlfriend, I'm his wife. It's still all of that.
Wow.
And as long as we're doing that, we're actually fooling ourselves, because we're actually like losing so much time on just, and now when I look at myself, I'm nobody's anything.
Same.
So I have to really, really, really find who I am. And I think that's a journey that I'm on right now. I think that without the recognition that everything that I do is interconnected, I'm completely 100% interdependent, and there are people who are dependent on me and I'm dependent on them. That's not what I mean by when I say like I have to identify as me. I think that when I specify that, I mean the question of like, who am I when there is nobody else's voice speaking through me, or nobody else's ideas of what I need to say or be like in this situation guiding me. That kind of a vacuum that gets created when you eliminate all of that and all of what society or your family or everybody has kind of defined for you. And probably I've understood that as my definition through them. That's what I'm talking about. But I would not have been able to do Papa Don't Preach without every single person who's been a part of my journey since 2000 and probably, I don't know, 10 or before that, like when I was 19. People are so important.
Definitely.
You cannot do anything in a vacuum in isolation. Never. I'm not a person who can even design sitting alone. I'm not a person who can like think of a caption sitting alone. I need people to like bounce off my ideas. I need them to say like really funny or ridiculous things and me saying, oh my God, that's shit. Like, I can do it better, even if it's for that. I do need people. You need people all the time. So
the interdependence is is really key, actually.
Yeah.
And I think back to that point of how I feel like because I've always been so independent, I found it really hard to be interdependent.
Right.
Because sometimes I thought that means being dependent.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I feel like I am reliant on somebody, I feel like, oh my God, this is like such an attack
and it's
to me, because I think like, oh my God, are they going to think I'm dependent on them? Because I'm not. I'm not dependent on them at all. But I've learned with time, especially in relationships, that you do need to be interdependent. I mean, I'm a solo person on my team, so I can't say that I work with anyone because I do this by myself. But I think when I do hopefully one day get a team and work with them, that interdependence is key. And I remember reading a book about it. It was, say if there's a wall and you're standing and you're trying to look over the wall, Dependence would be like someone has to carry you to look over the wall. And interdependence would be like you lean on each other so you can both see.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think. But this is a team, right? The people you have on this couch with you is a team.
Yeah.
So you are working with people. You wouldn't have a podcast if you didn't have a team.
If I didn't have anyone to come on. That's so true. So Papa Don't Preach has dropped the women's wear label. Tell me about that.
So I think when COVID hit, everybody went through that phase of, especially I'll only speak for myself. I went through that phase of, I want to leave everything. I want to shut down my brand. I want to go to like a yoga ashram and I want to just, what am I even doing? What's the purpose of it all? Like, why am I making clothes, shoes, bags? What is this? Why,
I can tell you your purpose.
Yeah. So I went through that and then we came out of COVID, and I remember this was post the first lockdown, which was a really long, severe lockdown. At least in India, you couldn't step out of your house. We did this shoot, and I think that's what's so beautiful about Papa Don't Preach, because every team member who has joined us has brought with him or her or them something so unique. So I remember this lovely boy Minaz, he joined the team and he identifies as queer. And just with him, there was this wave of, we want to do an entire campaign that's around queer love. And it wasn't anywhere around Pride Month or none of that. That was not the reason. So we did this, we found a real couple, we told their story. And I think that just set like a butterfly effect. And Alok with Menon decided to wear us. And I think when they did that, and the kind of reaction that we got on Instagram, it was a really emotional reaction because people absolutely hated us for doing it.
Really?
Yeah, and there was like, we were losing followers like 4,000 and like 5,000. And we're just like, I was sitting in a meeting and I'm like, what's going on? My team and my social team was so worried because we live in a time where it's so tough to get followers on Instagram.
So tough.
And here we're losing and we're literally dropping followers. So she was like, what do we do? And I said, nothing. I mean, it's okay. Let people leave. And then I decided to do a post and I wrote to Alok saying, I want to do this post where I want to say, okay, thank you for the people who are giving us love and bye-bye to people who are leaving. I hope you find love in your heart someday. And Alok responded saying, that's so beautiful. And they were extremely touched by it, which was really touching for me. So when I did that and when they responded that way, and the kind of reaction that we got, and now we have brides coming in saying, that's when I decided I want to be a Papa Don't Preach bride, when I saw that moment. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So we were always somebody because we're so much color, right? We were always dressing everyone. Everyone was okay to wear dresses, everyone, We never really consciously created clothes that could be worn by either gender unless it was a lehenga choli which needed like the padding and stuff like that. But after this episode, after Alok with Menon wore it and the kind of reaction we got, we decided to drop the women's wear label, the tag from our Papa Don't Preach women's wear label. We've dropped it. We're just a luxury label now. And I think that it isn't a really grand idea. It's something that was a very obvious thing that should have already happened really long ago and everyone should have kind of done it. And I think the whole point of fashion anyways, I always tell people that our collections are all season, our colors are all season. I don't feel like if we say we're being inclusive, why should we not be color inclusive in clothes as well? Why should there be winter colors or summer colors? And
right,
how is that fashion? The whole point of fashion is freedom. And why say summer collection, autumn and like winter, So we don't do none of that. So we are very inclusive in that sense towards colors and cuts and silhouettes and stuff like that. So it was just a very natural thing for us to do. And I'm glad that we did it when we did it. I just wish we had done it earlier. And I think I met with Alok in New York and had a really lovely conversation with them. And I hope that we see a lot more people, do that with fashion, degender it and just have fun with it and make it free again.
Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about, unfortunately, I wish we could be here all day, is Papa Don't Preach in the metaverse.
Yeah.
Now, you are one of the very few brands, the only Indian brand that are in the metaverse.
Yeah.
What is the metaverse? And
God.
why do we need Papa Don't Preach in it?
So that is such a tricky question. Ask a millennial. I'm just still trying to understand that. I gather all my Gen Z, the office, and I'm like, explain this to me. So it's a world that's getting created like the internet got created. Where like, I mean, don't quote me on any of this and fact check me at every point because I don't have the right technical words to explain this. But it's a reality that is being created. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of it. I watched my nieces in lockdown. They were preteens and they've come out teenagers post COVID. The entire time was spent on Roblox and like all these kind of games where the world is so real. They have best friends who are wishing them on their birthday, sending cards. They're meeting each other inside and they're going for like haircuts together in the game and they're going to. So I saw that there was a really real world that was created.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fashion is something that, and I again understood it from a very young person. And she said that her brother is obsessed with Fortnite, which is a game where, you know, the Travis Scott concert happened. And she said he spent days and days and days and days picking his skin and spent so much money on picking the skin that he would wear to the concert. Because, you know, on Instagram, like 500 or like 1,000 people will see you for a normal person. But in the metaverse, there'd be millions who would see you wear that skin. Right. So it's just an extension of this kind of life that we're living. We're opening up to like a bigger community that can interact with each other and be with each other and stuff like that. And fashion is always such an integral part of anything where you want to define yourself and show yourself and showcase yourself. So fashion is a very natural extension of people wanting to like step into this world, being themselves, looking like themselves, dressing like how they want to dress. So I don't know if there was a need for Papa Don't Preach to be in metaverse, but I think that it is a very natural way life is extending now. And Papa Don't Preach is such a young brand that it is for the future. It is not of the present. So we are talking about people who are going to be on the metaverse and go to college and university inside metaverse and, you know, attend events and stuff like that inside metaverse. So we have to be ready for that. So yeah, it was exciting. I think we're also the only brand that made garments look 3D because of the embroideries. There's nobody who's really done it so far, at least to my knowledge, and it may be limited. But this is what I know, that all the embroidery we did was very 3D. It really looked very real, and I'm excited that we were able to do that.
I'm excited to wear it in the metaverse and in real life.
Yeah, I hope we do. I hope we're not too old for when that happens.
We won't be. We won't be. But, you know, I've had so much fun talking to you today. I found your story so inspirational, even though you don't have to tell me from the rock bottom to the rock high. I really did. And I'm so grateful you've come. We have a new tradition now where we close the podcast with a truth or a dare.
Okay. All right, then. Truth it is for me.
Truth. Tell me one thing that you wish you could take back in your journey or do again.
There is really nothing. But I mean, if I had to do it all over again, if I was a student of fashion, not in terms of like studying fashion, but I would definitely work under somebody.
Okay.
I skipped that step. I was in a hurry to kind of start my own business and like save India and bring like amazing clothes to India. But I think what that gives you is so special, and which is why it really hurts me that the younger generation doesn't want to do that anymore and doesn't want to like intern anymore and doesn't want to learn anymore. Because there's so much pressure on them. I don't know if the truth is a long answer.
It's okay.
Yeah. Because I think what's happening to the younger generation is that they're seeing so many like overnight successes on the internet that they're like, if they're not making it and if they're not like successful and traveling and like, you know, they're not successful. Right. They're not famous. And that's so unsettling. Like, oh my God, I'm just an intern at 23. Yeah, you should be an intern at 23.
Even at 29 or even at 30.
Yeah, I mean, you should be learning because it is the only time you can actually learn on somebody else's money and you're actually getting paid for it. So all my trial and error and all the mistakes I made were on my own money. And I could have saved a lot of years. I could have saved a lot of money if I had just trained under somebody. And I would have had access to their network, had access to their own learnings and their wisdom. And I don't think anything, any book, any college can kind of replace that. So yeah, I wish I had worked for somebody. If at all, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm glad we did this. And thank you. You're absolutely lovely to speak with. And I'm so thrilled that you're wearing pink.
Next time, when we do this interview, I'll be wearing Papa Don't Preach. Yeah. Don't worry.
Yeah, I hope it's in India.
It will be.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening or watching, if you could press the like, follow, and subscribe button, it would mean the world to me.